Beware.
My grandmother warned me about mirrors. Unknown author. I'm sharing an experience of mine in hopes that maybe other people have had the same thing happen to them and have more knowledge of what it is. Allow me to describe myself. I'm Hispanic, but I don't really participate or dig into my culture much. Unfortunately, my family is more involved with our culture than I am, so occasionally I do participate in some holidays or celebrations. When I was young, my parents would drop my siblings and I off at our grandmother's house, due to both of them working long hours. My grandmother was a kind, yet fragile old woman who knew more Spanish than she knew English. Although she didn't have cable or anything of entertainment, we enjoyed going because of the folklore she shared with us. Like familiar tales, such as La Llorona, we would listen attentively with such fascination. My grandmother was a peculiar woman, though. It never came to attention to any of my siblings, nor I, about the lack of mirrors in her house. Only when a cousin of ours had visited my grandmother was it pointed out. When asked by my cousin if there were any mirrors in the house, my grandmother sternly told her, no, and not to be so vain about yourself. My cousin then asked her why she didn't have any. My grandmother responded saying, I have my reasons. I guess this answer satisfied my cousin because she didn't probe any longer. After hearing this, I too noticed that there weren't any mirrors in the house at all. This made me curious, so I asked my grandmother what her reasons were for not having any. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee when I asked this. I still remember the grave look she had on her face when I asked. Mijo, she said, listen to me, and don't forget what I am about to tell you. There is an evil thing that lives in the mirror. It can be any mirror in any place. It's always there waiting, but you'll never see it. It shows itself when it sees something that it likes, and when that happens, it comes out of the mirror to take whatever it is. As she said this, my skin broke out in goosebumps, and the room suddenly felt a lot colder than it was. As I've said before, I've listened to my grandmother tell many other stories and folklore, but none of them were like this. My grandmother looked serious, and her tone was very stern. I realized that this wasn't a story, but a warning. How do you know about it? I asked her. For a second, she stared into space and seemed to daze off. Then she focused her eyes on me and said, Go play with your brother and sister. I began to protest and was demanding an answer. She told me to behave and took off her sandal. Upon seeing this, I immediately ran away from the kitchen and out the screen door to the front yard where my siblings were playing. After that, it seemed to escape my mind, and I never brought it up again with my grandmother. Unfortunately, I'll never get an answer to how my grandmother knew about such a thing, as she had passed away when I was 11. I want to say that maybe it was just another piece of folklore that had been told to her before. But I know now that that isn't the case. Earlier tonight, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom and was just about finished. My sink is located right next to the door, along with the light switch. I have a habit of turning off the light before exiting the bathroom, leaving me in the darkness for a second or two. Nothing out of the ordinary has happened before, until tonight. I turned off the light as usual and was about to exit when something in front of me caught my eye. In the darkness, I saw a faintly illuminated face in the reflection of my mirror. I was immediately startled and quickly turned the light on. There was nothing but my terrified reflection. I felt a sense of confusion because I could have sworn that there was something there. So I chalked it up to being nothing and proceeded to turn the light off again. I saw it more clearly this time. I had only had the light off for maybe a second or so. But believe me when I say this, the faintly illuminated face resembled a woman's face. The eye sockets seemed dark and deep, with no eyes. The face was emotionless at first. Then suddenly, it formed a huge grin. I immediately turned the light on and ran out of the restroom, stumbled into the hallway, and into my bedroom, where I proceeded to lock my door and jump into my bed, covering myself with my blanket. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you just run out of the house or go to the kitchen to grab a knife or something? Well, understand, I was scared out of my mind and acted on impulse. My mind was running at 100 miles an hour, and I was having all these thoughts. I thought about calling the police and saying that there was someone in my house, but I was too scared to uncover myself at the time. Suddenly, the memory of my grandmother telling me about the thing in the mirror rushed into my head. My heart sank, and I began to tell myself that what my grandmother said has nothing to do with this. I mustered up some courage and reached out my arm from underneath the blanket to the little lamp next to my bed. I felt around and found the little switch and turned the lamp on. When I saw the familiar light through the blanket, I slowly uncovered myself and looked around the room. There's no mirrors in my room, I thought. My mind kept going back to my grandmother's words. I'm beginning to calm down now and decided to browse the web for help. Nothing's turned up, and as for now, I'm still locked in my room. If anyone out there has experienced anything like this before, or has knowledge of what this thing is, please contact me. As I type this, I can faintly hear something that sounds like glass being tapped on from down the hall. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdark_n2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.